The threat started small. A broken garden light, a strange truck idling too long outside my house at night. The knife on the porch hadn't been a prank, it had been a warning. Etienne insisted on installing new locks and a motion light by the back door. He worked quietly, his silver hair damp with sweat under the summer heat. When he finished, he didn't say anything, just gave me a look. The kind that meant I've got your back. Meanwhile, Matthew's behavior grew subtly more controlling. He started telling Ava that I was interfering too much, suggesting they take a break from family dinners. He planted distance like seeds, and Ava, caught between the man she loved and the mother who raised her, didn't know which way was up. But she wasn't blind. Not completely. 2 weeks after I showed her the passports, Ava came to my house after her night shift, still in her scrubs, pale and quiet. She sat at my kitchen table staring into her coffee. "Mom," she said finally, "I checked the joint account. And money's missing, not all at once, little by little, for over a year, almost $180,000. Her hands shook. Mine did too, but for different reasons. Not from fear, but from the awful, righteous feeling of being right. "He said it was investments," she whispered. "High yield, retirement planning. Did you sign anything?" "Yes." She covered her face with her hands, her voice breaking. "God, Mom, I just signed whatever he put in front of me. I trusted him." I put my hand over hers. "Sweetheart, trusting isn't a mistake, but ignoring the truth would be." The turning point came 3 nights later. Ava was putting away laundry when she found a metal lockbox tucked behind their bedroom armoire. Inside were 2 fake birth certificates, 2 passports with Juniper and Theo's faces but different names, and a typed enrollment packet for a private school in Belize City. She called me at 1:13 a.m. Her voice was no longer defensive. It was shaking with fear. "Mom, you were right." By sunrise, Ava and I were sitting across from Leela Park at her cramped office near the port. Leela listened to every detail without interrupting. When Ava handed over the documents, Leela's professional mask cracked just enough for us to see the seriousness behind it. "This is classic," she said. "New names, clean exit, offshore accounts. He's not planning a vacation. He's planning a disappearance." Leela spread out a map of the docks and tapped a red circle on Dock 12. "Midnight cargo run, August 22nd. That's our window. If we get him loading the kids onto that boat, the charges stick. Kidnapping, identity fraud, international flight. But we need to keep him unaware. The second he senses he'll vanish early. These men don't hesitate." That was the first time I saw Ava's expression change from shock to steel. She leaned over the map and said, "Then we play along." In the following weeks, Ava acted as if nothing had changed. She still went to family picnics. She still laughed at Matthew's jokes. She still slept beside him every night, even as she secretly copied bank statements, printed emails, and documented his every move. Meanwhile, Etienne and I worked on the boat. Late at night, under cover of the shipyard floodlights, we installed a hidden high-8 camcorder inside the navigation lamp of Matthew's boat. Etienne added a small bell inside the keel, invisible, but just audible if the hull was tampered with. "This way," Etienne said, tightening the last screw. "The river will tell us if he moves before his big night." The pressure built like the summer heat, slow, sticky, impossible to ignore. One night, as Ava walked to her car after work, she noticed a man leaning against a lamppost, Rex Navarro, one of Matthew's old business contacts. He didn't speak, he just flicked open a pocket knife and let the streetlight catch the blade. The next morning, a note was slid under my door. Family should stay out of the water. I brought the note straight to Leela. She didn't flinch. "Good," she said. "He's getting nervous. Nervous men make mistakes, keep the act up." Ava and I shared glances that said what words couldn't. We're in this together now. Then, one humid July night, the trap almost sprung too early. Etienne and I were watching the boatyard's security feed when the little bell inside the keel chimed. soft, almost delicate. Someone was down at the dock. Through the grainy black-and-white screen, we saw Matthew, in a hooded raincoat, hauling 2 waterproof duffel bags onto the boat. He opened the keel compartment and tucked something inside. Etienne whispered, "This isn't rehearsal, he's staging." I whispered back, "And we're recording." The camera in the navigation lamp caught everything. As the rain began to fall, the image flickered, Matthew glancing over his shoulder, then disappearing into the shadows. My heart pounded. The evidence was building. The clock was ticking. The Mississippi didn't care. It kept flowing, steady and silent, but I could feel it. The river was tightening around him, around all of us. The threat started quietly, like ripples on the river before a storm. A broken garden light. A shadow lingering too long outside my porch at night. And then the feeling, that sharp, ancient intuition, that someone was watching. Etienne replaced my back door locks and installed a motion light without being asked. He didn't say much, just gave me a look that meant, "I'm here. You're not alone." Meanwhile, Matthew's behavior grew more strategic. He began suggesting that Ava and the kids should spend more time as a family, away from me. He turned every visit into an intrusion, every dinner into a performance. It was subtle, but it was there, isolation brick by brick. At first, Ava defended him like a reflex, but she's my daughter, and underneath the doubt, she was paying attention. 2 weeks after I showed her the passports, she showed up at my house just after dawn, still in her hospital scrubs, eyes tired, hands gripping a folded bank statement. She sat down at my kitchen table and whispered, "Mom, I checked the joint account." I waited. "Money's missing," she said. "Not a big withdrawal. Little amounts for over a year, $180,000, gone." My chest tightened. She stared at the paper like she could force it to make sense. "He said it was investments," she whispered. "Retirement, high yield, I just signed everything." I reached across the table and held her hands. "Sweetheart, trusting someone you love isn't a crime, but ignoring the truth is." Her shoulders sagged. It was the first crack in the wall he'd built around her. The breakthrough came a few nights later. Ava was putting away laundry when she found a small metal lockbox wedged behind their bedroom armoire. Inside were 2 fake birth certificates, 2 passports with Juniper and Theo's faces but different names, and a typed enrollment packet for a school in Belize City. She called me at 1:13 a.m. Her voice wasn't defensive anymore. It was trembling. "Mom, you were right." By the next afternoon, Ava and I were sitting across from Leela Park in her small office near the port. Leela didn't waste time. She examined the documents, then unfolded a map of the docks. She tapped her pen against a red circle on the map. "Dock 12, midnight cargo run. August 22nd, that's the window. If we catch him moving the kids that night, it's kidnapping, identity fraud, international flight. Federal time." Ava's hands were shaking, but her eyes were clear now. "What do we do?" "We build a case," Leela said. "Quietly. The second he realizes you know, he'll move early. Men like him don't hesitate." That was the moment Ava changed. The panic didn't disappear, it hardened into resolve. She agreed to act normal around Matthew. No accusations, no sudden moves, just patience. And patience became our greatest weapon. Etienne and I spent late nights in the shipyard, working by floodlight. He mounted a high-8 camcorder inside the boat's navigation lamp, its lens hidden behind a brass grid. Then he tucked a small bell inside the keel, just subtle enough to chime if the hull was opened again. "If he stages the escape early," Etienne said, wiping his hands, "the river will tell us first." The weeks that followed were thick with heat and nerves. Ava laughed at Matthew's jokes, tucked their children into bed, signed fake vacation forms, while secretly copying bank records and printing his emails. Every night she slipped evidence into a manila folder that she kept in her trunk. And every night I prayed the act would hold long enough. Then one night, Ava was walking to her car after a late shift when she noticed a man leaning against a lamppost. He flicked open a pocket knife slowly, letting the streetlight catch the blade. Rex Navarro. One of Matthew's old business friends. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The next morning, a note slid under my door. Family should stay out of the water. I brought it straight to Leela. She read it once, nodded, and said calmly, "Good, he's getting nervous. Nervous men make mistakes. Keep the act going." And then it happened. Just after midnight, Etienne and I were monitoring the grainy black-and-white security feed from the boatyard when the little bell inside the keel chimed. Soft, almost like a whisper. Etienne leaned closer to the monitor. Through the rain-speckled lens, we saw Matthew, hooded, slipping down the dock with 2 waterproof duffel bags. He opened the keel compartment and carefully stashed something inside. Etienne whispered, "This isn't practice, he's staging." I whispered back, and we're recording. The high-8 camera captured everything, his movements, the bags, the look over his shoulder. He thought no one was watching, but the river had started talking, and we were finally listening. August 22nd arrived heavy and breathless, the kind of summer night when the air itself feels like it's waiting. For weeks, the Mississippi had carried his secret. That night, it was going to deliver his downfall. It was the annual River Lantern Festival, boats glowing like fireflies, jazz echoing down the water, families gathering along the levee. The perfect cover for a midnight escape. By sunset, Ava had kissed her children goodnight and tucked their little backpacks by the door, exactly as Matthew had instructed. She smiled like nothing was wrong. She even laughed at one of his tired jokes, but behind her eyes, the steel had hardened. Meanwhile, Etienne and I waited in his truck across from the shipyard, watching the boat through binoculars. Leela's team from U.S. Customs and Harbor Police were stationed in unmarked boats farther downriver, engines idling in silence. Radios crackled softly. Everything was set. At 11:42 p.m., Matthew emerged from the house wearing a hooded rain jacket, carrying the kids' backpacks and 2 duffel bags. Ava followed, holding Juniper's hand, Theo sleepy on her hip. She climbed aboard the boat exactly as planned. She had to play her part perfectly. One wrong look, one tremor in her voice, and he'd vanish early. I held my breath as the engine sputtered to life. Etienne tapped my arm and whispered, "He's moving." Leela's voice came through the radio, calm but sharp. "All units, Dock 12, target in motion." The river festival masked the hum of the boat as Matthew steered toward the cargo channel, following the route he'd planned for months. He had no idea the river was surrounded. But Rex Navarro, his enforcer, made a last-minute move. While we watched the boat, Rex slipped through the darkness toward my house. He wasn't carrying a knife this time. He carried a crowbar. The motion light burst on as he stepped onto my porch. Etienne grabbed the radio. "We've got movement at the house. It's him." 2 plainclothes officers were already in position nearby. Rex barely made it to the back door before they tackled him onto the wet grass, the crowbar clattering across the porch. One officer pinned him down, the other snapped cuffs around his wrists. The sound was like a gunshot in the night. Etienne exhaled. 1 down. Meanwhile, on the river, Matthew didn't notice a thing. He was focused, steering toward a dark cargo ship waiting downstream. As he opened the hidden keel compartment to stash the last documents, the high-8 camera hidden inside the navigation lamp caught everything. His hands, the papers, the kids sitting quietly unaware. Then came the signal. Etienne reached up and pulled a small cord, letting a red flare shoot into the humid night sky. One flare, one moment, no turning back. Harbor police boats roared to life. Sirens shattered the stillness. Floodlights ignited the black water. Matthew spun around, eyes wide, too late. "Matthew Crane, this is U.S. Customs and Harbor Police. Cut the engine and step away from the helm." Panic flashed across his face, the first honest thing I'd ever seen on him. He grabbed Theo, pulling him against his chest, using him like a shield. Ava didn't hesitate. She stepped between him and the bow, eyes burning. "Put him down," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "This is over." "You don't understand," he shouted. "I did this for us." "No," she said. "You did this for you." I arrived at the dock just as harbor police surrounded the boat. Etienne pulled up behind me, headlights slicing the fog. I ran down the wooden ramp, my heart pounding, every breath a prayer. I saw Theo wriggling, saw Matthew tightening his grip. And then Etienne, calm as ever, grabbed a dock cleat and hurled it. The heavy iron hit Matthew's wrist with a crack. Theo slipped free. A harbor officer lunged forward and pulled the boy to safety. Matthew tried to run toward the stern, but there was nowhere left to go. The spotlight caught his face like a confession. Officers closed in from both sides. "Get on the ground! Hands where we can see." Within seconds, he was face down on the deck, wrists locked in steel. The lantern lights reflected off the handcuffs like fire on water. I climbed aboard just as they were leading him away. He looked at me, no smirk, no charm, just raw hatred. I met his gaze and didn't flinch. You lose, I thought. The river chose its side. Memo: the aftermath. The arrests of Matthew and Rex cracked the case wide open. Leela's team recovered multiple fake passports, offshore banking instructions, and documented plans to smuggle the children out through cargo shipping lanes. The footage from the hidden camera became the centerpiece of the federal case. Ava testified. I testified. So did several women from Texas, Mississippi, and Florida who had also been targeted by Matthew over the years. He wasn't a charming son-in-law. He was a predator who played the long game. The judge called his scheme cold, calculated, and cruel. He was sentenced to 45 years in federal prison with no chance of parole. Rex took a plea deal and exposed Matthew's network in exchange for a lighter sentence. His betrayal sealed Matthew's fate. Sunrise resolution. Months later, life began to settle. Ava sold the house she'd shared with him and moved into a smaller place closer to me. She took back control of her finances. The kids started therapy. They laughed again. Etienne and I rebuilt the porch where the knife had once been left. We started going to the jazz club on rain-soaked nights, the way we used to when we were young. The Mississippi still flowed past us, steady, ancient, honest. One night, Ava looked at me across the dinner table and said, "You saved us, Mom." I shook my head. "No, the river did. I just listened. The Mississippi hasn't changed. It still flows steady and quiet, carrying secrets and silt alike. But my life, our lives, look nothing like they did a year ago." Ava sold the house she once shared with Matthew. She bought a small, sunlit place just 3 blocks from mine, with a white fence and a crepe myrtle tree that explodes with pink blossoms every spring. She manages her own finances now, keeps everything in her name, and teaches Juniper and Theo how to save their allowance in jars labeled dreams, gifts, and rainy days. They're healing in ways only children can, quickly, messily, beautifully. Theo sleeps through the night again. Juniper doesn't flinch when she hears boat horns anymore. Their laughter fills Ava's kitchen like music. Matthew Pike is inmate #37245 at a federal facility in Louisiana. 44 years left on his sentence. No visitors, no more secrets. Rex took his deal and disappeared into witness protection somewhere far from the river, and Leela Park got a commendation from Customs for breaking one of the most carefully constructed family smuggling rings in the Gulf. She still drops by sometimes with strong coffee and stronger advice. Etienne rebuilt the back porch where the knife had once been left, stronger, thicker, with handrails carved like waves. On warm evenings, we sit out there together, watching the water in silence. After 40 years, we've stopped pretending we're just old friends. He calls me Mon Cur sometimes. I pretend not to blush. The other women Matthew conned from Texas, Mississippi, Florida, formed a group with Ava and me. We call ourselves the River Circle. Once a month, we meet over video calls, share updates, remind each other of the strength we found when the truth came crashing through. We aren't victims anymore. We're witnesses, fighters, survivors. Sometimes, when the house is quiet and the air smells like rain, I replay the sound of that hollow thud inside the keel. It was the river's warning. It was the moment everything began. I used to think justice meant a gavel and a sentence. But real justice is quieter. It's my grandchildren laughing without fear. It's Ava paying bills in her own name. It's sitting on a porch with someone who never stopped caring. It's sleeping through the night knowing the storm has passed. The river remembers everything. And so do I.